Hi, Savio. I thought I would read you a book. I actually bought this book for you a year ago, and I was planning to send it on Valentine's Day, but I forgot. So I'm going to read it to you, and I will send it to you, and you can read it, or your mom can read it to you. It's a big book. Your mom can read it to you on Valentine's Day, and it's about Saint Valentine. Now, Saint Valentine lived a long time ago in ancient Rome, and your daddy can tell you a lot more about it. So this book, it says, "In loving remembrance of my grandmother, Joyce E. Beach Hoebner, 1922 to 1987. So the man who did the drawings for this book, he is making this book for his grandmother. So I'll hold it up so you can see the pictures, and I'll read the book. In the ancient city of Rome, there lived a humble and gentle man. His clothes were not as fine as the noblemen's, and his leather sandals were worn thin. He did not live in a grand house made of smooth marble, but in a small dwelling in a crowded in a crowded part of the city. The man's friends and neighbors called him Valentine. So you can see here is Valentine, and he lives in a crowded part of Rome, or one of the cities. Valentine was a physician and practiced his trade in the tiny second room of his home. In that room stood a cabinet full of bowls and jars that held herbs and powders. There were glass and ceramic pots filled with animal fat and beeswax, and jugs of wine, milk, and honey that Valentine mixed with his medicines so that they would not taste bitter. So you had to put the honey in the medicine so that people would still want to eat it, especially little kids, because little kids didn't like eating bitter medicine in those days. So you can see there's a little bee. Here's his jars, and they have all the special medicines that he needs. Because he's a doctor. A physician is a type of doctor, so he has to make sure people get better and don't get sick. When ill or injured came to see Valentine, he would show them into a tiny room and examine them very carefully. He cleaned wounds with wine and vinegar and bandaged them with fresh cloth. Or he might grind up herbs and roots in small bowls to ease a visitor's pain. When it came time for the patient to pay, Valentine would only accept what could be offered: a jug of wine, baked bread, or a new pair of sandals. If the patient had nothing, Valentine would say, "It was but a few herbs and prayer that I have healed you, my friend," and send him on his way. So Valentine is a very nice man. He always helps sick people even when they don't have money to pay for the medicine. You see that? That's fire all over Rome. These people are scared. They're running away from the fire. Prayer was an important part of Valentine's life, too. But where most people in the city prayed to the many Roman gods, Valentine and a small group of others prayed to a single god. The Romans did not like these people, called Christians, who worshipped only one god. Whenever anything bad happened in the city, the Romans almost always blamed the Christians, even if they had nothing to do with it. Sometimes the Christians were put in prison or killed. So here there was a fire in Rome, and it wasn't the Christians' fault. It had nothing to do with them, but the people in Rome were like, "Oh, it must be the Christians' fault," and they started putting Christians in prison and sometimes killing them. So it was very dangerous to be a Christian in ancient Rome because everyone else worshipped all the Roman gods, and Christians only worshipped the one true God. Knowing the danger of his beliefs, Valentine, who was a priest of the Christians, prayed for each of his patients, but only after nightfall. So when it got dark, Valentine would go to his room and he would pray to God, to the one true God. You can see the snow in this picture. It must have been pretty cold to see all the snow. One afternoon, with a small child came to visit Valentine's door. The man worked as a jailer at the emperor's prison and had heard about the priest's healing powers. Valentine took the girl's hand and led her and her father into his examining room. The child seemed well, but when Valentine held up the oil lamp for a closer look, he realized why the father had come. "She has been blind since she was born," said the jailer. "Can you give her sight?" Except if God does a miracle, it's impossible. See, there's the little blind girl. Here's Valentine, and here's her poor dad. See the little girl? Her eyes don't work at all. But they never worked. When she was born, they already didn't work. So she's been blind since she was born. See? This poor little girl's eyes. Although he knew that blindness was one of the most difficult things to cure, Valentine vowed to do his best. From the cabinet, he took down a precious copper box filled with a wet, waxy paste and dabbed a little into each corner of the child's eyes. The jailer thanked Valentine and tried to pay, but the priest refused. "I cannot accept payment when it is doubtful that the child will regain her sight. Bring her again next week, and I will apply more ointment." The jailer and his daughter thanked the priest and were gone. So, you see, here's the poor jailer with his little blind daughter. He cares about her very much because she's his daughter. And here's Valentine with his medicine worrying that the little girl won't get better. That night, like every night, Valentine prayed for his patients, but he prayed longest for the jailer and his child. The father and daughter returned the following week and again the week after. Each time, Valentine applied a small amount of the waxy paste, but the child's eyes remained sightless. She couldn't see. And that's not a surprise, because if you're born blind, it's very hard to fix. So Valentine is doing everything he can, but the little girl's eyes aren't getting better. This is the little girl, and that's Valentine. You see the field of flowers. After so many visits, the three soon became good friends. Sometimes, while the jailer stood guard at the prison, the priest took the child along and with him while he gathered herbs and plants for his medicines. Together they walked outside the city gates and down the old stone road until they reached the countryside. In the spring, the fields were covered with bright golden crocuses, the first flowers to bloom in Rome after the winter. While Valentine gathered white mandrake root for curing headaches, the child would gather bouquets of yellow and orange crocuses to give to her father when the priest brought her home. He's taking care of the little girl while the daddy's working. Sorry, I'm Becca sneezing. And here, I'll finish reading the book tomorrow.